Okay, it's that time again. It's Wednesday, at least as I'm recording this, right? So, welcome to another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dashi Miller here from Warrior Concepts here in East Central Pennsylvania. So, if you get a chance to stop by, information is on every platform that we have. Anyway, so today we're going to take a look at something that creates a lot of confusion in self-defense training, um, sometimes more than anything else. And it certainly creates a lot of debate, right? And that is which style or which approach to self defense is better, right? I'll talk about how some of these contrast and whatnot, what I'm talking about here in a bit. But what we're going to talk about today is 4 core defensive strategies, not techniques, not styles, not this thing over that thing or whatever, how things get done. Okay. And then we might approach this idea of which one is best. Some of you already know where I'm going with this. If you were on for this week's Kuden podcast on Monday, then you already have a head start. If not, that's okay, right? But here's the question, right? The question is which strategy is best, right? Because often the debate is over this style or that style or whatever. And this is why some things get created as an answer to the question, but they might still be missing the mark. And again, I'm not here to tell you that you have to pick one thing over another thing or which one is. I don't play that game. All right. So again, which style is best, which approach is best, and most people answer that question with a style answer or an approach answer. Some folks won't even get this far into this discussion. They might not even get past reading the title before dropping something in the comment that has to do with you don't need any of that. All you need to do is carry XYZ and bad guy's history, right? So again, we have to be careful with assumptive thinking. But so my point here is that based on whatever option they choose, right? They train to be aggressive, or they train to be evasive, or technical, or strong, or fast, or weapons based, or whatever, right? But here's the problem: the moment you commit to a single approach, right, a single answer as your identity, right, as your preference, as your favorite, as your go-to, whatever it is, your preparedness level actually starts shrinking, right? Not growing, right? Because real situations don't care, right? What your favorite method is, okay? Whatever's going on in front of you, however that attack is unfolding, right? Not in a ring, not in a dojo, not in a self-defense class. What the actual bad guy or bad guys or girls or whatever, right, are bringing, okay? Armed, not armed, proximity before the attack actually starts, all those kind of things, right? The environment, clothing, it's a whole bunch of things that matter, right? But again, reality doesn't care. What we like, what we dislike, what our preferences are, what our favorites are, doesn't care. What matters and what reality cares about is, can you function or not? Okay? And believe it or not, the universe is way okay with either one of those, because either one of them will be resolved. Okay? They're either going to be resolved by us going home, or us going to an ER, or us going to someplace else. Okay, so the other thing we need to think about is reality changes faster than a fixed strategy can keep up. Okay, in a real situation, right, what might start out as fist or whatever, and the next thing you know, a kick comes out, or the guy grabs you because he can't get enough, he can't land enough hits or whatever, so he grabs you to lock you down to try something else, or a weapon comes out, whatever, right? And it doesn't have to be that he was carrying something, right? I often make that comment that he grabs the hammer off the table or whatever. Okay, you knock him to the ground, he stands up, and he's got a rock or a broken piece of glass in his hand, right? So now, right? So today isn't about learning multiple systems, right? My approach never is about learning multiple systems. It's about understanding 4 core response strategies, right? And how to move between them without abandoning your foundation, right? So how can we operate? How can we learn and operate based on the same core principles and concepts, learn the techniques that we're learning, but be able to apply things in more than one way. Okay, so talk about a hidden trap here. Um, but this hidden trap is in identity versus strategy. I understand this identity has a strategy, but are we strategically adaptable? Or is our strategy based on a belief system and an idea about something being best, something being me, something feeling more natural, something, okay? Not based on the conditions of the situation, okay? Um, the identity thing is the my way or the highway belief system, right? It's the square peg in the round hole kind of thing, that kind of thing, right? Strategy requires adaptability, flexibility, assessment, uh, clarity about what's actually going on, where the weak points are, where the strong points are, those kind of things, and best actions based on that information. Okay. Not, well, I always do it this way. Okay. Fantastic. One, it's never failed me. Okay. Don't forget to put comma yet at the end of it, because past successes or past failures don't dictate future successes or failures. Okay. Just because it's never failed me yet doesn't mean, what it means is I have not encountered a situation where this hasn't worked. Okay, great. Right. Now, tell me about the attackers. Tell me about the situation. Right? Was he fighting the same way? Right? Were things generally the same? Okay? Was it, were you unarmed against a knife? Were you, okay? Because if they're fighting the same way that we are, then okay. Right? Or if they're a piss poor fighter, or you're bigger or stronger or faster, okay, of course. Right? Make anything work. Right? So, as I've been saying for the last 2 weeks, everything works when it works. Everything works until it doesn't. Okay. All right. So again, there's this hidden trap, right? Most practitioners don't consciously choose a strategy, right? They drift into one that feels natural. When people go looking for martial arts, they may do some research and whatnot, but what they're looking for is something that feels like them, like they're already there, right? So just show me how to be me better. Okay. But every style is really designed around. That's why in classical Budo, regardless of lineage, what you often find is there's a good cross section, right? Weapons, unarmed, control mechanisms, those kind of things. They have their approach to doing it and their little secrets. Each one has those things. But this whole style thing, that's an alien concept. Right? I don't mean alien like. Right. All right. So, but what I'm talking about here, when they drift into one that feels more natural, right? I'm more aggressive. I like to move, right? Or I like to stay grounded, right? Um, but few people think about why that might be. Okay, bigger guys, bigger, solid. I don't care if it's musculature or extra padding, right? Big boned, whatever you want to call it, right? Don't tend to be able to move really fast, right? Not like the little wiry, squirrely guy, right? So they tend to lean into things that hold, right? That kind of thing, wrestling and just different things, right? The little wiry guy, right? He tends to do little hit and run tactics. Not always, but there's a general thing across the board. Just like people's personality type, to a large degree, determines what college degree or trade school or occupation they go into, those kind of things, right? Knowing these things about, but this is a ninja thing, right? Knowing these things about people, it's not a guarantee. It just kind of leans in, okay? So, but what happens over time, if this is all we do, is it slowly then becomes that person's identity, right? I am a karateka. I am a ninja. I am, right? I'm a kicker. I'm a whatever, right? I'm a gun toting, whatever. Okay. So again, there's nothing wrong with those skill sets. This is not arguing one skill set over another. You'll see as we go along. Okay. So, but what ends up happening is over time, right? People, because the style mindset was kind of leading, people saw punching and kicking. Now that's lacking. What if it goes to the ground, or what if grappling happens, right? So we're going to add some of that stuff in, right? Or the guys who are wrestling, right? Shit, what if I can't get a hold of this guy and he's like punching me or trying to kick me or whatever? How do I deal with that, right? So again, this stuff blended into what we now think of as MMA, mixed martial arts, right? A lot, most, I mean, especially in Ninjutsu, but a lot of classical Budo schools that was MMA before MMA was a glimmer in the eye. It's like we've got this mixed composite system, right? Ninjutsu being one of the most composite, right? But this composite system, it's moving along, and then all of a sudden in history, right, things kind of splintered into we're going to do punching and kicking, we're going to do grappling, we're going to do ground fighting, we're going to do wrist locks and restraints, capturing energy, we're going to be evasive, we're going to be, and then there's this attempt to bring things back, and it's all cool, right? It's a natural progression. Okay, I'm not knocking it. It's a natural progression. Okay. MMA, right? Blended striking, grappling, submissions, technically expanding the toolbox. Okay. So, but strategically, most training still assumes direct confrontation. Yeah. So the hidden trap, where's my other notes? Had it here. There we go. Yeah. Okay. So most students tend to pick not their nose, their system. Okay. Tend to pick. Can happen for a lot of different reasons. Can be the personality thing I was talking about. Could just be that the martial arts school that they decided to sign up for was closest to their house or closest to their work, and they didn't want to disrupt their schedule too much. And then once they got involved, ego just decided that that was best. Lots of different reasons. Okay. But most students tend to pick this. If you're not one of them, fantastic, right? So, but MMA tried to fix it. Okay. Fix it by, whoops, that one, right? Mixing. But what did they mix? They mixed skills. Skills are not strategies. Strategies are the way skills are applied. It's not the same thing. Okay. When I talk about different strategies or different strategic approaches, right? People think I'm talking about like punching and kicking versus grappling, or restraints versus ground fighting, or unarmed versus carrying a gun, or something like. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, that's skills. Okay, I believe that you need to have a good broad base of skills, because we never know what the violence is going to look like. We never know what's going to be required. But that's skill sets. Right? That's not what I'm talking about today. Right? This is a level above skill sets. This is a level above what I'm doing with my body to his body and how I'm doing it. Okay? This is how I'm controlling the bubble. Right? This is not the same. All right? So, but again, strategically, most training still assumes direct confrontation. Okay? In Japanese, they call it chikara kurabe. Right? Chikara kurabe. It can imply things like, let's see what happens, pushes toward context. What it really implies is brute force against brute force. Okay? Or speed against speed, strength against strength. Okay? It's contest, right? In survival, energy conservation leads the day, but we're not talking about that today, right? But when I'm talking about direct confrontation, what I'm talking about is forward pressure, engagement, and dominance. Okay? In the self-defense world, you don't have to win, right? Escaping is perfectly okay. You don't have to win. Just don't lose. Okay? And that scrambles some people's brains because, well, if I'm not losing, then I'm winning. Now, if we both go home, nothing, no marks, no broken things, whatever, that's a freaking good day, right? But again, it's a different way of thinking. Okay, so in in ancient, there's this classical framework, and some of you already know it, but there's this classical framework that came out of Japan. Actually predates Japan, goes all the way back to the Silk Road to Tibet and ancient India and stuff like that, right? In Japanese, though, it's known as the Godai, right? It's 5 great elements. And again, people misunderstand these things. If you missed it, check out this week's Kuden. I go into it a little more deeply that way. But in Godai terms, right, this earth, water, fire, wind, void, these are classifications or code labels to classify things based on similarities, based on energy, based on approach, that kind of thing, right? And we'll talk about those in a minute. But in Godai terms, this forward pressure, this aggression, this head-to-head engagement, this need to dominate and win, that kind of thing, right? That's primarily a fire thing, right? I'm taking the fight to him, he's bringing the fight to me, and we're gonna, well, history will record who was right based on who won, right? Just with more skills, right? This isn't just, it's not the strategy that I'm talking about. I mean, it is a strategy, right? Go get it, right? But it just layers more skills onto it, right? This MMA thing just layers more skills, right? So we're not stuck, right? If I need to punch, I can punch. If I need to kick, I can kick. If I need to grapple, I can grapple. That kind of thing. But even when you watch MMA fighters, you can see what skill sets they lean into, okay? But it doesn't matter, okay? Because what you're watching in the ring is this kind of thing. Okay. I don't care if they're circling or whatever. It's when they're dealing with the situation, what are they doing? Right. So it's pressure against pressure, that kind of thing. Right. And again, there's nothing wrong with that approach. There's nothing wrong with the fire approach. Please don't take anything that I'm saying today as me picking. Sorry, spoiler alert. I don't have a favorite. Okay. I don't have a preferred method because I don't know what I'm going to be facing. And so I need to be open and have as many options as possible. Okay. Also, once I select one, I'm not stuck because fights and attacks can change rapidly. And I need to be able to go from one approach to another one as though I decided today I didn't want cream in my coffee. I wanted one of those flavored creamers, or I wanted to go, black with some chocolate powder or something like that. Okay. Again, there's nothing wrong with fire, but when fire becomes the default answer to every situation, right? Options disappear. Right? I say this all the time. If all you have is a hammer, then every problem has to be dealt with like it's a nail. Okay? Even if it's screws, even if it's bolts, even if it's glass, even if, okay? So let's take a look at Godai as strategic options, right? So today we're looking at the elements not as a belief or mysticism or any of this kind of stuff, right? But as decision-making lenses, how we're looking at approach methodology, so to speak, right? We often will add the word mode, not Hello mode, right? But mode after the English or the Japanese, right? So what we have, and I'm going to do it in inverse order from the way it would normally be for my folks that are around on a regular basis. Earth would normally go down here. This is a bonus thing. I want to do it this way, right? So chi is Earth. Putting the Japanese on here too, because I got some folks that if I don't use the Japanese, or if I don't use ninja terms or Bujinkan terms or whatever, well then that they're going to wait until I do the translation for them because they're stuck on the terminology as opposed to what it is that we're actually doing. Okay. All right. So, sui water. Okay, just a side note, we're going to Japan, taking a group of students to Japan in May, and we're going to have some Japanese language lessons a little bit so they can navigate a little bit better. Okay, these are not like chi earth here. We're not talking about the ground. We're not talking about dirt. Okay, that's do, right? Si is the essential nature of water, right? So again, these are symbolic, right? You wouldn't go to Japan and order a glass of sweet. Okay, we use the alternate translation, same kanji, but we're ordering a glass of mizu. All right, so be careful with these. People have done a little translation where they've done things where they don't call it. They came up with their own style of mizu or their own style of the Godai, so they'll call it do, mizu, ki, or ka, or they'll kaze instead of fu, that kind of thing, right? All they did was pointed at something that's a thing as opposed to the way energy shows up and things like that, right? So ka, fire. Sorry, just had a thought for a moment. Fu is wind, and if we get to it, if there's enough time, we'll talk about this one down here, the fifth one, void. From a strategic standpoint, not some mystical woo-woo kind of thing, right? So what we might say is this is an earth mode strategy. This is a water mode strategy, right? And the reason we do that is because there's no such thing as earth, water, fire, wind, whatever techniques. There are techniques that can be applied with a certain strategy that has a certain feel to it or a certain approach to it. But a lot of students will get caught up in these things. I know I did way back in the beginning because I learned things using this model, but then I got stuck on, well, this is a water technique, or this is no. This technique has more of this quality to it, but there's always stability, right? There's always stability. Okay, strength. Right? There's always flow. There's always adaptability. Okay? Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. So there's always commitment and intent. Okay? There's always evasion, movement. Right? And here, right, we're always thinking. And even if we're not talking to them, communication, right, body language is speaking. Okay, which is why we're very, very careful when we select kamae, right? And the first kamae my students learn is this hira, because we're trying to de-escalate things. Not de-escalating from, look, man, I don't want to fight. Okay? Whoa, hey, right? So we learn how to incorporate body language into this whole thing. But ku is also on a next level the ability to move in and out of these things as necessary. But every technique, every kata has stability, has flow, has adaptability, has commitment, intent, right? You're targeting, precision, right? Those kind of things. But we're going to go a level above that as well. Every one of them, right? You're avoiding incoming shots, whatever, unless your thing is to stand and block in place. See, now that points to a certain strategic approach. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. So, so what I'm not saying is that like MMA doesn't have this, or other skills don't have this. If we're only paying attention to what's happening, the skills that are being used, which can be categorized this way as well, we're still missing the point. We're still in technique thinking, right? Because if we're clinching, we're locking them down, we're trying to restrain them, that kind of thing, that's earth. We're using strength and leverage to exert control, right? If we're slipping in and around what they're doing and then coming back against a weak point, well, that's a water strategy, okay? If we are preempting, right, boom, getting that, right, putting the pressure on kind of thing, right? That's a fire strategy, right? Evasion, right? If we are staying too far away and and making it difficult for them to get a hold of us because we're unpredictable, right? That's a win thing, right? So, but you can watch people do these things, and they tend to get stuck, right? They tend to do their thing, and you can see it in some of these fights where they're holding their own, everything's going well, and all of a sudden their opponent switches gears. They change approach, right? They were trying to be precise and come out there with kicks and all that, and all of a sudden, boom, they shoot in and go for them, and this person goes into a fight, flight, or freeze kind of thing. They lock up, they stiffen up, they try to back up or whatever, but they don't have something for that, right? And so they're bracing for that incoming thing because that's all they know, right? It's not the same, okay? Every once in a while, you can see things peak out, but the question here isn't about it accidentally happening, or if the person's just naturally intuitive, right? And they make it work, or if it was intentionally trained into the system. Okay. So we look at these from an expanded level. Okay. Earth stabilizes, right? It's grounded, we're on balance, that kind of thing, right? It also absorbs pressure and controls structure, right? Again, structure, right? When space is tight, when someone grabs, when you need to protect someone behind you, right? We would use this because I can't be dancing all over the place, and I can't just charge him, because the farther away I get from the person I'm trying to protect, the less protected they are. So in bodyguard operations and whatnot, let's say I'm in a diamond formation, so we got a lead guy, we've got the principal, the guy that writes the checks, right? In the middle, we've got somebody at the back, I'm on left flank, and there's somebody on the other side on right flank. So it's a diamond. Principal's in the middle, and we're moving this way, okay? Now, if we change direction, we don't do one of these things. If we need to suddenly go to the left, right, the whole diamond does this, and then this person becomes the lead. The original lead guy is now right flank, left flank. Okay, it's that thing, right? But either way, each person in each position has a cone in front of them or beside them or behind them that they're responsible for, paying attention to, things like that. Okay, so if I'm left flank, right? So I'm over here, principal's here, lead, right? Okay, and I don't know, I'm either a control freak or I don't trust members of my team or whatever, and so I'm watching over here, and then I glance over to the right flank to make sure he's paying attention, or to check, or to the front or whatever. Guess what's not covered? This, okay? Or something happens over here. Could be something aggressive, but it could also just be this person is insinuating in, they want to get, their autograph or whatever, right? And I have to do a quick little, we have these little manipulative kind of things that make them kind of retract, but it still comes across as almost like accidental. It's a really cool thing. But what ends up happening is, if I do it like the movies, where I turn to confront this guy, and then we get involved in a tussle or any engagement that lasts more than a second or three, there's a hole in the armor. Okay? It's the same thing. Okay? Same thing. Right? So, but again, in any of these conditions, right, Earth becomes the answer. I have to hold my ground. And that's really what Earth is about. Okay? Holding your ground. However, now, it's a strategy, but when you really understand this, people can hold their ground through stubbornness. Stubbornness is a negative water quality. Not moving cuz. Not mission-oriented. If I move from here, something bad happens, and now I'm part of the responsibility for that happening. Not moving. Okay? You're not getting through here. Right? It's not stubbornness like, or what? It's not that kind of thing, right? So the strategic option here is, I'm holding my ground, right? He has to come to me, okay? But whatever I'm doing, however I approach this, right? Friday during our masterclass, we're actually going to be looking at doing mushadori. I think that's the technique I picked from this this multiple approach, because everybody's learned the classical models, right? But how would you put mushadori on from an earth position, from an earth strategy, right? How would you do it in a water type way, right? How would you do it in a fun, that kind of thing, right? So we don't have to learn a bunch of other skills, other techniques, right? We'll expand our skill set just by being able to do mushadori way more than one way or two ways. Okay, so it just changes, right? So again, earth isn't stubbornness, right? If you root without adapting, you become predictable. Some people won't move. Well, that just makes you a target. Makes you easy to break. Okay, so it's a strategy when that's the context. But as a bodyguard, that's an earth strategy. This diamond formation is four guys around another person that they're protecting, right? As literal human shields. Earth doesn't mean you're not moving. It doesn't mean you're not holding ground. Doesn't mean I'm not moving from here. It means this position is my responsibility. Okay, I'm not moving from here. Okay, I'm controlling this realm. Okay, so but again, if I take up the negative would be I'm holding my ground because I'm just a wrestler, or I want to get a hold of this guy and get him in a chokehold, whatever, right? And I didn't scan things really well, or because I'm really good at that kind of thing, I didn't take into account that this guy, is wearing a hoodie. He might have some pew pew, be able to shoot me from behind, or pull something, a clip knife or whatever, just start stabbing behind himself, whatever, just okay, because the conditions in which they normally operate with that clinch and whatnot doesn't allow for weapons, doesn't allow for guns or knives. So it's never taken into consideration. That's problematic. The moment that it happens, that's problematic. Okay. So water strategies, let's take a look at that, right? So water redirects, okay? Water is about flowing and all that kind of stuff, but it also redirects, okay? Based on what's going on. Think about like if you've ever been to the beach, you're on the sand, you go up to the water's edge, right? It comes up and whatnot. If you stick your fingers in the sand just past the water's edge and pull the sand back, what's the water do? Well, it fits in, right? Okay. Just like a river follows this channel, but what most people don't recognize is that over time, the channel changes because of the force of the water, right? So it will literally redirect because of the way the pressure is being applied. Okay. So on one level, what we see is the water's flowing and it's constrained by the earth. What we don't see is that second by second, that is being worn away by that same adaptability. Okay. So again, it blends and it reshapes incoming force. Okay. This is where sensitivity and timing live. Right. But water's not avoidance. Right. Water changes the terrain. It doesn't surrender to it. It looks like it's adapting to that thing, and it is at one level, but it's also making that other thing change. Okay. So when I adapt to somebody, somebody's plan is lead cross or a boom, quick combination kind of thing. And that first one comes in, and instead of dealing with them here and bobbing and weaving, leaving 95% of my targets in the same place, right? Instead of doing that, that first one comes in and I shift over here, or I shift in any direction, right? Now suddenly, oh shit, that one, that assumed, because it always works, right? Always works, right? He's got to slows him down. My adaptation disrupts, changes his thing. It changes his form, changes his intent. Now, his intent is still to break me, but he just has a harder time doing it because he can't stay up with it as well. Okay, so this fire strategy here, right? This is not about the same thing. People think that this is what they're seeing, okay? But they're not, right? This is not what fire is. Fire disrupts. Fire meets somebody in their preparation stage before or just as they're starting to launch. So it's a preemptive strategy, right? When we say aggressive, under fire, we're not talking about I'm just the meanest motherfucker. It's not that. It's direct, right? It's you call it beating him to the punch or whatever, but it's not about speed. It's not speed based on how fast I contract my muscles. It's speed based on when I move relative to when he moves. Okay. So it seizes initiative, it breaks rhythm, that kind of thing, right? There are moments where decisive action ends a problem before it grows, before it gets bigger, right? As my grandfather used to say, before it becomes assholes over tin cups, right? You shut this thing down, right? This is the person that's approaching you. You can see it, look on their face, and they're going to bring up the same fucking topic that they always bring up, and you go, "Whoa, don't even start. Don't even start." So I don't have to hit him. I'm preempting that bullshit. Go take it somewhere else. That's a fire strategy. An earth strategy is they come in here and wah, 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 right? And this is literally not me engaging on the, or trying to restrain myself on the inside because I just want to grab them by the throat or, no. And then they have to take a breath for the next round and I go, finished? No, okay, keep going. That's all right. You do you. No, keep going. Feel better? No? Try some more. And they just run out of steam. They'll go, that's a strategy. It's not the technique. It's the state of being. It's how I'm approaching dealing with this shit. Right? From a water response, it can look like it's an earth thing, but something different is going on the inside because I'm not dismissive. I'm not letting them vent and it's not affecting me. That's earth. Right? Water is, he's saying all of his things, right? And I'm listening to what he's saying from a distance, disconnected. I'm not, he says something, I say something. He said, no, that's a negative fire trading shots kind of thing, right? That's how most people argue, right? Because all they have is a need to win, not to resolve the conflict. So he's saying his thing, and I'm listening for three things: things that are true, things that he's lying about, and the third thing is things that he's embellishing, right? He's making a mountain out of a molehill kind of thing, right? And I'm just tracking the lies and the embellishments. Because when it's my turn, I'm going to go, oh, whoa, my turn. And the only thing I'm going to throw back in his direction is the things that he lied about. And if I need to, the things that he embellished. But the lies are usually enough because I just adapted to his onslaught, used his own stuff against him, and the things I'm targeting, right? The riverbank, the parts that are going to change the fastest are the softest dirt, not reinforced by trees and roots and all that kind of stuff, right? So he has no ground to stand on. If he's going to keep arguing, he has to lie about the lie. He has to dig a deeper hole. What I'm targeting are things he can't defend rationally without making his position weaker. That's a water strategy. Okay? It's not, this is what I mean about strategic approach. This lies above technique. This lies above what I say. Because what I say will be dependent upon the moment. The technique I apply will be dependent on how my body lines up with his body. But what's my approach? What's my strategy? This is why most people are in technique level training and action and whatnot, right? Struggling through the struggle, right? This is at a different level. This is not the same. The thinking is not the same, right? All right. So again, fire is not aggression. It's not aggression to be aggressive, right? It's aggression in the context of get there first, preempt his action so he can't complete it, right? He's in preparation stage. It's kind of like when somebody throws a punch and we move offline and tag them or catch that arm, look in the gosh, or this counter strike to the face or whatever happens before they stop moving. We're not trading shots. I'm hitting him while his body is breaking and trying to resettle and reset so it's stable for the next shot. I know it happens really fast, but I'm going to catch him in that gap because the body is not stable enough for that. He can throw something, but it's not going to have the same jazz behind it. It's not going to have the same stability. It's not going to be able to rock my world the same way, even if it lands. Okay? So it's not the same. Okay. So fired is aggression. It's precision applied at the right moment. Okay. It's precision applied at the right moment. Okay. So this is, again, adapting to what he's doing and responding appropriately, right? This is preemptive strategy, right? Preemptive. I engage before he's set to fully go. So whatever he does is not going to have the same, it doesn't matter if he's stronger, if he's faster, if he's, doesn't matter, because his body isn't in the position to apply strength the way he applies it, speed the way he applies it, the way it needs to be so he can be those things. That's the only way that a smaller, older, shorter, fatter, whatever defender can deal with somebody who owns the strength world, owns the speed world, owns the, okay? So this is not two bulls smashing together. This is one being smart enough to meet the other one before he gets his head down and his legs in position to explode. Okay? Put your head down, great, I'll hit you right then. I'll drive your face into the dirt. Right? So it's not patiently waiting for them to go. Right? It's just go. Right? Wind strategy. Right? So wind changes angles. Wind can look chaotic, but wind stays on the move. Okay? It disappears from the line of force. Right? In the military, we call this a flanking maneuver. The attack comes in, and I bypass this way. That's not fire just because I move forward. Right? He's coming forward. I have to do half the step, half the energy to be right beside him. But if I stood still and he stood still, it would take way more to get to that position. Right? But now I'm in a flanking position, and not only does he have to reposition to get at me, the pocket I move into, based on the way the human body is built, he can't get at me easily. He can bump me, he can nudge, he can push, he can whatever, but he can't gain any strength because the human body doesn't work well that way. Okay? So again, disappears from the line of force. Again, this is where flanking happens, where blind spots appear, right? Where conditions are shaped before impact. Okay? Here's a mindset change or shift that we give our students. Most people, rightly so, right, are worried he throws that punch, he's going to hit me in the face, right? But from a win perspective, my mindset isn't about him hitting me in the face because I'm going to move, right? What it is he wants to put his fist in the space that my face is occupying. So I let him do it. Okay. You want to put your fist there. Okay. So he gets what he wanted. Not the way he wanted it. Right. He's thinking he wants to hit me in the face. I'm thinking he wants to put his fist here. So I'm cool with that. Okay. So it's more of a freedom kind of thing. Right. So again, wind isn't retreat. Right. Wind is positioning. Right? And positioning in blind spots, positioning in weak areas around the body where he can't get at you well. He can't get to his weapon, or he can't, even if he draws his weapon, that little thing I had with the restraint earlier, right? I move over here, he draws his weapon, I shift a little bit more behind him. So I'm using his body as a shield. So unless he wants to shoot himself or shoot through himself to get at me, right? He's got a problem, and he's going to have to make a big overt movement that I can use. Okay. So it's not the same, right? And the bonus that I put down here, most of you who know the Godai has this void element in it, right? Normally, void would sit above it. It would be earth, water, fire, wind, void kind of thing, right? But this is communication. This is awareness. This is de-escalation. This is escaping to safety. Escaping kind of fits in between this because wind is, I'm not staying here for this shit. I don't have anything to do with it, right? Also, that's your fight method. Fantastic. But at the moment, because I know the moment, Void knows that the moment I sync with your fight system, if you're better at that than me, then you have the edge. So it's in my best interest to not fight the same way you are, which is why everybody that's making this attempt to modernize ninjutsu, modernize taijutsu by blending it in with all these other things so they can fight more like everybody fights today, I think they're missing. I think they're missing the boat. Again, my opinion, but the farther away they get from the the control and principles and how this stuff works in form, right? The more predictable they become and the easier they make it for the other guy to stop what they're doing, avoid it, whatever, right? So nobody fights like that way anymore. Fantastic, right? If you ever watched the movie The Matrix, the very first one, they're in the arsenal, him and Trinity, right? And she says, nobody's ever done this before. And he says, that's exactly why it's going to work. That is void thinking. If you're doing it like everybody else, then you don't have an edge. You're making it easy for him because you're predictable. Okay. So again, void sits above these. It's not just being able to shift and all that kind of stuff, right? But it's knowing when not to engage. Just because I have the skills that will allow me to survive an attack in a dark alley doesn't give me license to walk down every fucking dark alley. Just because that's strategic suicide, right? So coup is what keeps the elements from becoming habits, right? Without coup, you react, right? With coup, you choose. So from this perspective, from this level, we're assessing, we're aware of what's going on it. And this level is what allows us to choose the appropriate response for this situation, this attacker in this moment. Not just because it looks like other ones I've dealt with, or this is the way I always do it, or whatever, right? That's getting stuck. This is what gets in the way, right? So which one is best? The one that my assessment tells me is best, right? So before we finish up with that, I've got to cover something else here, right? Kamae is not strategy. People that know this system and have learned things, they've learned certain kamae at certain levels and whatnot, will tend to attach kamae to. I did it, right? This is not a judgment call. It's just an observation, right? From personal clarity, right? So they'll choose these. So Ichimonji is a water posture, and Shizen is an earth posture. And actually, Shizen is closer to a wind posture. But anyway, if we were going to label those things, right? Because it's open and receiving. But then they'll transfer that to techniques. And what they'll do is they'll make a snap judgment that this technique, this kata, because it starts with this kamae, right? Or does that kamae and that uke, well, then it must be a water strategy. That's not the way it works. Okay. Sorry. I apologize if I popped anybody's balloon or whatever, but that's not the way it works. It's okay. What people are missing is, and what I was missing is that at that level, the teachers borrowed these kamae and whatnot because certain things allow for long-range defensive angling, drawing him out, right? Using that water strategy to break things and whatnot. But Ichimonji or any of those things like that are not by their own nature, right? Because the first contradiction you're going to run into is somebody teaches this one and it sounds like it's this. Because the feeling is, if you touch me, I'm going to kill you. Right? When we teach it at that level. It's in the scrolls, right? Not that kind of wording, but it's that kind of idea, right? There's also this earth sensation to it, right? I'm so confident in my kamae. Confidence is an earth thing. I'm so confident in my kamae that I can win with this alone, which is why in the first level of training, when we learn techniques, we learn to transition from kamae to kamae to kamae. No move is not a kamae or going from one to another. We don't do kamae and then react or respond and then return to kamae. Okay? We're going to look at that Friday again when we revisit. If you were in for class, the master class last night, we worked with koku. But Friday, we're going to take a look at that. We're also going to take a look at how koku is something other than what people think it is. Talk about that in a minute. Right? So anyway, this is where a lot of training goes sideways, right? We start making mistakes. Okay, students start believing, again, if I'm using this kamae, I must be using this strategy, right? No, that's choreography, right? That's not ninpo, right? That's getting fixated again on something else, right? Because ego wants something black and white, clean, right? Life and violence isn't clean, right? So kamae is not a personality test, okay? It's not They're not things to be used because you prefer them. They're things to be used because they're contextually appropriate for controlling the conditions, and specifically the conditions needed by him to do what he is good at. So your kamae, the first thing your kamae should be doing, other than like establishing proper distance, so when he attacks it, his attack will fail because structurally you're just not quite where he needs you to be, but he's willing to take a shot anyway. There's a dissonance, right, between his brain going, got the shot, go, and his body physiologically being able to complete that in this with the same kind of strength and speed that he's used to. Okay, so there's this Tenkan going on, right? So anyway, but we're not picking and choosing based on preferences, right? Kamae shows the options you're holding, okay? It increases your options in certain ways, 3 or more, right? And it reduces his options to 3 or less, okay? Same Ichimonji, same Seigan, same Hyō, right? Same Kamae, right? Different outcome, right? Right? But the same kamae can express earth, water, fire, wind, depending on intent. Okay? So instead of thinking technique starts from kamae, start seeing that movement is kamae transitioning, right? The angles matter, the intent behind it, those kind of things, right? There is no moment where you are not in kamae. Okay? And if there is, then you're open. Or if you're in a kamae and you're open, then you're in the wrong kamae for that position relative to his weapons. Okay? This is strategic level thinking, not technique level thinking. If we're still thinking about the moves, the target to hit with what fist and what, that's technique. Okay? So as an applied example, right? If I were demonstrating like a ski, right? Or a lunging shito, okay? And this is, again, if you know this, great. If not, this would be the only little demonstration thing I do. But if I do ski, right, or and I'll do it from this side now, right? Or if I do a lunging shito, I'll do it from this side, right? Do a lunging shito, boom, this kind of thing, right? Back out to here, okay? See what I have? Okay. That end position is a forward leaning, I'm not leaning, but a forward Ichimoji, Seigan. Okay. We have a reclining, we have a centered, and we have a forward, right? Hatsumi Sensei, before you think that I'm making this stuff up, Hatsumi Sensei has this stuff all over the place. I think one of the most obvious places, if you have the original Bojutsu video, DVD, whatever, he covers it in there. He covers it in a lot of places. Okay, so, but again, at that strike, at the end of that, most people think the technique ends, right? But structurally, the end position often becomes the forward Ichimonji, or it's the position that might be the start position of the next one. Okay, for basic people in training, I lied. I'll do another one here, right? So from here, we start with this. The attack comes in, so we do this big rolling thing, right, to hit. Okay, cool, right? He's starting over there. I'm over here. He attacks. I do my thing, right? But don't forget, one, we could be in any start position when that attack comes. Two, that start position could be the end of something else. And three, no matter what our intent is to hammer this guy, we could miss because he's another human being with a brain. Right? So I could be in this position. Let's change this, right? I can be in this position when the next thing comes. So I want to be in a position at the end that's as close to what I need for the next move as possible. But if I'm swinging this way, or I overswing or whatever, and I miss, right? Now, I'm okay with swinging through because we swing through to a kamae that allows me, right? But the question isn't what happens if I hit him? That's where beginners go, right? Or I don't care what the bell color is. Beginner mind is beginner mind. I don't care what happens when I hit him. Because at a certain point, I have to start acknowledging that he could make that not happen. Okay. The question is, from that end position, based on the way I swing, what happens if I miss? Okay. So I'm going to need to tighten things up so that I'm more precise. which actually is a water principle, okay? Because it's scientific, right? So again, the strike didn't leave kamae. Strike was done from kamae, not from kamae back here, right? Because the kamae is doing a whole lot of things, controlling, disrupting, unbalancing, and whatnot, all the way in till that's delivered. It's not here, kamae, uke nagash, nothing, and then strike. There's a whole bunch of things going on in that central thing. The kamae is doing everything, right? Well, see, it's controlling here, or it's throwing it to create that moment where I have a greater chance of having it land. Okay. All right. So, so the strike didn't leave kamae, right? It transformed into another kamae, or the same one, just opposite side, right? So now, right? Is this earth? Is it wind? Is it fire? Right? The shape looks the same. The kamae shape looks the same, but the strategy changes everything, right? So here's the question. What strategy is that direct, committed, take the fight to him? But if he's right here and I have him locked up with a mushadori, and from right here, boom, drop him straight down, right? Crush him in place. It's something different, right? If I catch this, something else is coming in and I go around it, and then that's it. See, it's something different. Strike is the same. The fist is the same. The target's the same. The approach to making that happen, not the same. Okay. And no, and instead of writing these things down as henka, these things get explored so that we're good in all of these. Well, since I can't do those other things because fire that's just me, or earth, that's just me. Okay, well, hopefully you don't have to tell St. Peter that. How'd you get here? Well, it could not be me. Or how about if we just expand the options that we have and see ourselves as adaptable and not so fixed that things have to go our way, or we have a freaking meltdown, or we lose, or everything fails and falls apart around us. Okay? The more right we are, often the more wrong we end up being, unless we stay in our own little bubble around people just like us and we don't venture out. It's easy to be right all the time there. But as soon as you start exploring and going out into the world in new, you leave the neighborhood, you leave that fight ring, or you get out of that group that always fights the same way, and you get out into the big bad world. Right? I'm an ex-federal cop, bodyguard, all that kind of stuff, right? When people knock, I can't think of a time I've ever grabbed anybody by the wrist, or anybody's grabbed me by the wrist, or whatever. Well, I invite you into my world. Okay? Or a gun's always the answer, whatnot. I'm pretty sure if I walk into a place and this guy's already got his gun out and he's got it in my face, in the moment, the gun's not my answer. Because if I go for my gun, he's going to shoot me in the face. I'm going to have to deal with that, and in the process, I may be able to get to mine. But carrying or not, I have to operate like I'm unarmed. There are conditions and situations where fighting or punching and kicking. Okay, cool. There are other ones where clinching and restraining. Yeah, been there. That's what you have to do to get at least the first cuff on it, right? But for that to be your thing all the time, from a survival perspective, that's like my thing is water purification and collection. I don't know shit about shelter building or fire building or whatever. That's going to be one of you guys. You're going to have to, no, you can't do it either. Well, shit, I guess we're going to like freeze to death or we're going to succumb to the elements. Okay. So we have to be careful. We don't do this in any other part of our world, right? We have cooking utensils and techniques and things like that for preparing food. Even if yours is just microwave and prefab meals or whatever, and a refrigerator or pantries to store things cool before, after, whatever. We have that, but that's not what we use to watch TV or to watch Netflix, or right? We got things for that, and we have ways to go about doing that. We have ways, skills and whatnot to drive to and from work. I don't care if you have a car, bike, whatever, right? Those are skill sets because they're designed to navigate certain aspects of the world and our life. But somehow coming into this realm when attacks could come in so many different forms, people decide that it's all about fist fighting or grappling or winning a contest with somebody on the ground, ignoring that his friend could come up and pop you in the head or kick you in the head or hit you with a freaking baseball bat. There you are. I got the lock on. Now I'm going to take that long nap. Okay. So again, it's not you. And when I say you, I'm third person. You guys are all enlightened. So you get it, right? So on Friday, we're also going to take a look at that koku kata again, because many people try to do it like, again, they try to do the kata like two rams butting, right? But structurally, if you look at what's going on, the attack comes in, right? And we shift away from that to draw him out, right? And so that's kind of a win thing, right? We're not on the line of the attack, okay? But there's this moment, right, where I catch him, right? Because the way the kata is written, the moment my arm touches, uke, receiving, right? But it's not uke nagashi, it's not whatever, right? And it's always different. But as soon as that touches, I move his arm. Why? Because he hasn't settled yet and it's easy, okay? But from there, and I hit that arm, okay? And then he comes in with another attack. What do I do? Well, I shift around it, get offline of it, and then re-engage with him from that direction. It's more wind-like than anything else. But people keep trying to do it fire-like. Like if I beat him to the punch, right, I can win. Stop thinking about win. Stop thinking about winning and start thinking about what's the best way to deal with this problem that's coming at me in the moment. Winning assumes you're thinking about the end, and we didn't even get there yet. Because if I screw up steps 2, 3, and 4, or 1, I don't get to the win. Right? I have to earn every move, everything. Because if I screw any of that up, okay? That's why the definition, if you were in for the master class last night, the actual written kata description for koku does not sound like the model. But the model works, it fits, right? Because the model is an expedient, the one that we think of as koku, right? But the scroll just says the enemy, not uke, not teki as an attacker, not opponent, the enemy, right, is coming to your face, to your men. But men, where, right? It doesn't say tsuki, which a lot of these translations, uke tsuki, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say it's a hook punch. It doesn't say it's a jab. It doesn't say anything like that. It doesn't say angle, nothing. What's implied is the move you do from that, the move we teach from that, has to work for anything he throws. See, now that's not just about him throwing a punch and me doing uke or uke nagashi or whatever the hell you want to call it, right? That has to do with positioning. That has to do with being at the right distance. So no matter what he throws, everything will come to a fixed point. So my movement will catch it. Doesn't matter what he throws. Because they're all gonna end up in the same place if I'm in a certain place. Okay? But then the way he kicks, right? There's a follow-up kick. We normally do it off of a front leg kind of thing, right? But the kata does not spell that out. Doesn't say what kind of kick. Doesn't say if it's straight, lifting, lateral, if it's a knee, if it's a shin, if it's a stomp kick, front leg, back leg. Doesn't say. Because koku is about being able to move be able to be certain of your movement within the context of uncertainty. Everybody likes to say, it's like, you're supposed to move, play in space. Yeah, I know, but what the hell does that mean? It's not a license to do whatever the hell you want. Make up whatever kind of variations. It implies that we're supposed to know. Regardless of what he throws, we're controlling the conditions that, regardless of what he throws, we'll be able to do this thing that puts us into a position to take it. That's more of a responsibility than just learning the kata. Yeah? Again, not a judgment, just translating the stuff, right? If you want to kill me, kill the messenger. Right? So anyway, but again, structurally, koku is way more like wind, right? Angle, flanking, control of conditions, those kind of things. By the time anything decisive happens, the outcome was already shaped by positioning, by the movement, right? So that's not preemptive. We're waiting for everything that comes in, and then we're either moving one way or moving the other. Okay. So, but if you force fire into that, if you force I got to get him, I got to hit him fast. If you force earth in there, I got to hit him hard every time, that kind of thing, right? You lose the lesson of the kata. Okay. So we're back on this identity trap. It's identity trap, right? One of the most limiting phrases in training is, that's just my style. Okay, just my style. Style is often just habit under pressure. Okay. If you always choose the same element, the same approach, right? You don't become advanced, right? You become predictable. Anybody that's seen you fight before, they have all the information they need. Okay. And if you really are that badass and that's how you present yourself, they just shoot you from across the street. Okay. Gives a whole new reason for passing the Saki test and not stopping our training after we intentionally or luckily or by luck pass the test. Okay. So you become predictable, right? And predictability is exactly what a real attacker exploits. Right? Here's something to hold on to. Okay. What I have there. Identity trap is, oh, yeah. Habits make you predictable. Okay. So habits equal predictability. Predictability on your part equals certainty on his part. The more certain he is, the easier his job is. And certainty on his part leads to commitment of action. Think about it. The more certain you are of success, the more willing you are to do that thing. Like if you knew you couldn't fail, or the chances of failure, slim to none. Okay? So habits lead to predictability or produce predictability. Predictability produces certainty. Certainty produces increased commitment to action. He knows exactly what to do. There's no reason to not. Okay? So Ninpo is about learning to be predictably unpredictable. What the hell does that mean? Because I don't have set habit patterns? People assume that as a predictability, right? Sensei's always going to do something, whatever I thought wasn't. And then if I do what they thought I was going to do, that surprises them even more. Okay? But I'm not being tricky or unpredictable just to be unpredictable. I just don't have one set way to do anything I do, whether it's to go from, I live less than a mile from my home. Right? There's 3 or 4 paths that I take on a regular basis just to mix it up. Okay? It's part of my security mind as well, right? It's easier to determine if somebody's following me if I break it up, right? Because they have to follow closer because they don't know where I'm heading. But if I always go the same way all the time, all I have to do is make a turn or two and they're like, oh, psh, right? Now they're harder to detect. I know this as somebody who used to follow people, right? They're harder to detect because he'll just reroute and go park near the house so that when I show up, yeah, sure enough. Right? So now I can't detect him following me because he's following from the front. Because I gave him the win. Right? And therein lies a problem. Okay? So habits lead to predictability. If you are predictable, you increase his level of certainty. If you increase his level of certainty to the right degree, then all you've done is increased his commitment you've produced an increased commitment to action state in him, and he will actually act on it. Now, later on in our curriculum at Sandan, right, we start exploiting that, right? So I do certain things a couple of times in a row. So the predictability, certainty, commitment loop picks up, and then he acts on that, and I can shortcut it because what I'm showing is kyojutsu. It's not what's really going on. Okay. But he doesn't need to know that. Right. So this increased commitment to action, this certainty, right? That's what you're giving your attacker when you're predictable. Okay. And that attacker, replace that with argumentative teen, spouse, friend who's always trying to manipulate, the guy next door that's an ass, whatever. The more predictable you are, the easier it is for them to come up with a workaround. Right? So integrating this into training is what's important, right? This is why our curriculum progresses the way it does. Evasion, then control, then balance breaking, then integration, right? Each phase builds access to more than one element without fragmenting the system. It's not the same as what most people encounter with MMA, where I'm going to learn a punching and kicking system or style, and then I'm going to add a throwing style, and then I'm going to add a grappling style, and then those are conflicting principles and concepts. This is a unified system of principles and concepts applied using different strategic modes to get the job done based on what he's doing, based on the context. Right? I might normally be let me come back here, see what you're doing before I come back in. But when I was a police officer in uniform, I had to be this guy. No, sir, that's not going to happen. And then, right, as soon as things happened, there was a quick evasion kind of thing, but that was to get hands-on and restrain to get them into. So very different, right? One part of my life required almost universally a certain type of strategic approach. While as a civilian, I have options, right? Another part, when I was in the military, almost universally a certain strategic operation. But off duty, out in the world, now as a veteran, back to options. Okay. So whatever it is, our beliefs, our belief system, our training, whatever, should not reduce our options before we even got there. Okay. So you're not learning multiple styles. Any of my students, right? Long distance, local, whatever. You're not learning multiple styles, even though it might look like it. You're not learning multiple styles. You're learning multiple response modes within one principle-based system. Right? It's congruent, right? And the assessment tools to use them correctly based on appropriateness and context, not preference and favorites. Okay. So which one's best? None of them. The one that's best is the one that works in the moment, right? So none of them and all of them, right? They all have the potential of being best. They also have the potential of being the shittiest choice you could ever make, right? So the goal isn't to become earth, water, fire, wind, and have one really good strategy, right? The goal is to become the practitioner who can move through them without attachment and be good at any one of them that we need to apply, right? Because the moment you believe that one strategy defines you, one strategy is best, whatever, right? You've already reduced your options. And since violence is random, at least to us, it's targets, right? But we don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know what's going to be involved. Weapons, unarmed, multiple people, whatever, right? To crystallize down to one option, assuming that it's always going to be like the fist fight that we used in high school growing up, that becomes, again, problematic. I know I keep like trying to do that, but right? So again, in real self-protection, the person who survives isn't the one necessarily with the strongest style, right? It's the one who still has choices left, When he gets overwhelmed, he can have the strongest style. But if he's overwhelmed and he's, koku itself, that kata I keep referencing, the kick typically happens. If we've done everything right and we've controlled conditions, the kick happens because there is a cognitive overload. He's collapsing and he needs to do something. So it's not going to be powerful, but there's something in front of him and he needs to take that shot. Okay? It's a panic response. It's coming out of a panic response, not because he's in control of the situation. Okay? Everybody wants to get to the end where they can deliver that Boshiken and drive him into the ground and stuff like that. But shit, if I pair the leg right, based on his overcommitment, stuff like that, he could fall down right there. Okay? When I chop that arm, boom, he could, I'm done. Right? So it's, anyway. Right. So that's what I have for this one. There's the URL. I know it's a little bit long this time. For the Friday masterclass. The page is not quite ready yet. It'll be ready here by end of day for anybody who wants to get in on Friday's masterclass, where we're going to be taking a look at, I'm just pulling one out. Right now, what's in my head is mushadori, right? This uplifting elbow shoulder dislocation kind of thing. And looking at how to apply it from these different strategic options. Okay? They're not more techniques. The technique is mushadori. It's manipulating the arm a certain way to affect the shoulder and the spine and the feet. Okay? We do this to the arm and the shoulder to lock the spine and immobilize the feet. If that's not happening, then we're not doing mushadori, no matter how much wrapping we have going on right here. Okay? So we're going to take a look at that from these different strategic approaches so nobody can confuse. We're doing different techniques. I will switch out kamae as well that we're using to get into position, so nobody can confuse kamae with the technique or the strategy. Okay, and then if we have time, we'll revisit that koku, so we can really look at it more from a wind. Because often people who do know this will think that wind is passive and it's soft and light touch and all that. No. It's slippery. It's evasive. It's never being where he expects you to be, and exploiting his overcommitment in that moment. Okay? It's hiding in blind spots and those kind of things. So we'll take a look at how koku actually does that. Again, very, very quickly, because we did a major breakdown on it during last night's masterclass. Right. So hopefully you'll join us. If you have any questions, comments, even just to say hi, post a comment or whatever, tell the algorithms, right? Just kind of trains them so that this stuff gets put out more and all that. But hopefully I'll see you again in some training. Like I said, we've got our trip to Japan coming up in May, but we also have our spring training camp coming up. We have our fall camp. And again, next year we'll have Daikomyo side, but there's going to be more seminars on the roster. So please make sure that you're on the mailing list, one or another. I don't care if it's Kuden or Whiteboard Wednesday or whatever. Get on a mailing list. That way you can stay in touch and you can get information about training opportunities. Right? That's it. I'll see you next time. Right? Train hard. Be safe.